I know it's weird, Holman. It's super weird, but I am reading a book, and I'm almost done with it. I'm 17 chapters into The Mysterious Case of Rudolf Diesel, and I can't tell you the last time I read a book cover to cover. I shouldn't be proud of that statement,
So
but
what are you
I am.
saying? We're starting the Truck Show Podcast Book Club?
Maybe we should.
This
would be the second author we've had on.
No, we've had more than that.
Have we?
Yes, absolutely. And I want to get Brent Underwood from Cerro Gordo wrote Ghost Town Living, which I'm almost done. I have like 4 chapters left of that and getting on a plane tomorrow and bringing that book with me.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I've almost purchased that book 3 times. I never hit the add to cart button for some reason. I feel
it's
like
amazing. It's a fast read and it's phenomenal.
I'll tell you why. Because I keep thinking that you and I are going to go up there and interview him, and I'll grab a book up there because I know he stocks them on site, and then get him to sign it, and I'll just do it all at once.
Buy it at Amazon, you read it so you have context for when you're up there, and then have him sign it while you're there.
I like that. That's a good angle.
I don't know why you wouldn't do that. Anyway,
I don't know.
This book is special because this is completely different. We have a New York Times best-selling author who's a novelist, which is not what you would normally associate with the Truck Show Podcast, although this is one of those books that it'll catch your eye, and the more you look into it, you go, oh, I care about that.
I do care about this, and I didn't know how much I cared about it until I got into it.
Lightning doesn't even know how to read, and he learned how to read just for this interview. He found this book, and it was amazing. He picked up reading real fast.
Well, first I got my subscription of Hooked on Phonics, and then I bought The Mysterious Case of Rudolf Diesel by Douglas Brunt. So Rudolf Diesel, the father
of Diesel.
Well,
the interesting thing about him is he had this entire cottage industry of the diesel engine. It explodes during the Industrial Revolution, and there are powers throughout the world, all of the elites from the Industrial Revolution
that weren't so happy about it.
And all of a sudden, he disappeared on a boat. And so,
quote unquote, fell over the railing.
Right. So there were a few different theories on what happened. And Douglas Brunt, who we're going to have on the show here shortly, he did an incredible amount of research and put this together as his first nonfiction book. It's really exciting. It's an incredible read. We highly recommend it. So if you're on the fence, stay tuned because we're going to have Douglas on here as soon as we thank Nissan for presenting the Truck Show Podcast. And if you're looking for a brand new truck, you want to head on down to your local Nissan dealership. You can check out the Titan or, of course, the Frontier, our favorite midsize truck. And you can get yourself a new hard body, which happen to like, or a Pro 4X, or even an SV. Every Nissan Frontier comes equipped with Nissan's 3.8-liter dual overhead cam V6 with 310 horsepower, 281 pound-feet of torque, backed by Nissan's 9-speed automatic transmission. So if a Nissan pickup truck sounds like something that you're interested in, if you go to nissanusa.com, you can build and price the exact model to your specs, and you can even set up a Nissan at-home test drive where they'll bring the truck to your house. So no excuse not to put Nissan at the top of your shopping list and try one out.
And speaking of Rudolf Diesel, his goal was to make engines more efficient because before him, it was like steam power. Single-digit efficiencies, 2, 3, 5% was considered a wonder. He needed like 20, 30, 40, 50% efficiency. If you're looking for more efficiency from your diesel pickup truck, you should be looking at bankspower.com to buy yourself a Ram air intake. After all, your diesel needs fuel and air. And the easier it can draw in that cold, dense air, the more efficient it will become. Find your Ram air intake at bankspower.com. Just type in your year, make, and model.
Hey, Lightning, you know we're huge fans of AMSOIL. In fact, I've got a huge case of it right behind me.
I know.
Here in the
Why is
studio.
it still sitting here? I thought you were going to dump it into the 392.
Who's got to take pictures?
Oh.
Got to take pictures.
Okay.
We love our AMSOIL. They make a great product. But did you know that AMSOIL not only specializes in developing synthetic lubricants, but they offer a great warranty? The AMSOIL limited warranty is built with an extra measure of protection. Some other oil companies out there, and we're not going to say who, they only guarantee their products till you reach a specified mileage. Not AMSOIL. They don't place any restriction on their warranty coverage based on total vehicle miles. And that's one of those things that makes AMSOIL first in synthetics.
But the thing is, it's you don't need it, though, because AMSOIL is the best lubricant you can buy for your gas or diesel pickup truck. So, like, it's kind of like Nissan. You know, they have a great warranty, 5-year, 100,000 miles on the Titan, but, like, you don't need it. You also don't need the warranty on AMSOIL Signature Series Full Synthetic. It seems silly, but I'm glad they have it. So
Absolutely.
thanks, AMSOIL.
AMSOIL synthetic lubricants deliver wear protection, engine cleanliness, and fuel efficiency conventional oil simply can't match. They help your vehicle run better. Find out how AMSOIL synthetic lubricants can save you money and time by lasting longer than conventional oils at AMSOIL.com.
The Truck Show. We're gonna show you what we know. We're gonna answer what the truck, 'cause truck rhymes with the Truck Show. We have the lifted, we have the lowered, and everything in between. We'll talk about trucks that run on diesel and the ones that run on gasoline. The Truck Show, the Truck Show, the Truck Show. Whoa, whoa.
It's the Truck Show with your hosts, Lightning and Holman.
All right, are we ready to dial up our TSP and HD line? First time we're using this. I'm a little nervous. I hope it works.
Yes, this is our brand new state-of-the-art. You know, do you remember growing up and there was like the everything was Space Age 2000 or the Ginsu 2000 knife? This is the Ginsu 2000 of 2020's podcasting interview technology.
It is. Okay.
Yes.
We might be overhyping the fact that we just have a digital line now when we're not
instead of just
over
the phone?
Yeah.
Oh, got it.
So
Okay.
for the first, Doug, can I call you Doug or Douglas?
Doug is great. Thanks.
Doug. So for the first 6.5 years, everything was over the phone because we're both from radio, old school radio. And
all right,
everything was.
Lightning's going to come up with some horrible story that is not mostly true. The reason we do the phone is because everybody has a phone and we don't have to ask them to do anything else. You pick up the phone, you call in, there's no magic behind it. But because of the cell service, sometimes the call quality can be a little bit spotty. So Lightning has upgraded us to this digital line. We're going to experiment with it, see if it works, and it should have similar quality to you sitting in our fine studio here.
At least we're not using a high-profile, best-selling novelist to experiment our new tech with.
But we are, because he's, once again, you're telling lies. Doug, this is you're our first. We'll be perfectly
if this
honest.
works, it's going to be gorgeous, I'm sure.
Prepare to dive.
Prepare to dive.
Hi, Captain! Captain, we're too deep!
There's no such thing as too deep. Okay, that was too deep.
Great intro. Thanks, guys. I love that.
No problem. So, Doug, I purchased your book, and here it is. I'm holding it up for Holman to see. The Mysterious Case of Rudolf Diesel. I don't think we've had a novelist on the show before, and I will tell you that I'm not an avid reader, but I am up to chapter 17, and it killed me to not finish this in time for this interview.
How weird was it for your teenager to read you bedtime stories for a change?
So they didn't. I read this, but I will tell you that my entire family looked at me side-eyed, and they're like,
Dad's reading. What's wrong?
Reading. What is this? Now, hold on. At first, they thought it must be like an auto shop manual that was covered with another, like a novel sleeve, right?
Right. It was just like when you used to watch or read a comic book in math class behind your textbook.
Exactly. It is so well researched and so fascinating, and I didn't know really any of it. You've given kind of the synopses on other interviews that I've seen over the last couple days in doing some research, and you are able to sum up this book in just a few sentences, which I'd like you to do, and then we need to dive deeper into it, but without spoiling it for the listeners, because they need to go put their money down and order it on Amazon for Prime delivery tomorrow. Doug, if you can give us just the synopsis of this book.
Well, it turns into an amazing mystery, like an Agatha Christie mystery at the end. But Rudolf Diesel, like many of your listeners, maybe, I, 8 years ago, didn't know there was a Rudolf Diesel who invented the diesel engine. But in 1913, he's traveling from Belgium to Great Britain on an overnight passenger ferry across the North Sea, and he disappears on September 29th, 1913, just before World War I. And it's a sensation around the world. It's the front page of the New York Times, newspapers in Western Europe, all the way out to Russia, about the disappearance of the great inventor, Rudolf Diesel, because at that time, he was a huge celebrity. It'd be like Elon Musk disappearing today. You know, he's on a flight to Nantucket and he's gone. Where's Elon? It was like that in 1913. And
well, it's funny because I think we're all, if you're a diesel enthusiast, you have an idea that Rudolf Diesel is a person, or that Nikola Tesla was a person, and that these technologies were around a person named after a person who invented them, or whatever. But I had no idea that there was this mystery surrounding his death. I guess I read about his accomplishments and his accolades and things he did in life. I failed to ever question how he died. And this is a completely new kind of facet to the Rudolf Diesel story that I never even knew existed.
Yeah, so there were two theories. It's sort of gone down in history as a suicide, that he jumped off the ship and drowned. But there were also two theories around murder, that he was possibly murdered either by Kaiser Wilhelm II, the Emperor of Germany, or by John Rockefeller, the founder of Standard Oil. And the reason Kaiser Wilhelm was a suspect was that by 1913, the diesel engine had emerged as the only way to power a U-boat or submarine. Gasoline, kerosene engines wouldn't work. It had to be diesel. And the engine was still young enough that Rudolf Diesel was still the maestro. You really needed his involvement to get a good submarine program going. And the reason he was traveling across the North Sea on that day was to go be the co-founder of a new diesel engine manufacturing company in Great Britain. Its mandate was to build submarine diesels for the Royal Navy, who at that time was in a naval arms race with Germany. So Kaiser Wilhelm became a suspect. Rockefeller was a suspect because Rudolf Diesel had advocated flexibility with regard to fuels for the diesel engine, which exists still to this day. And it mainly runs on petrol diesel, as folks know. But even 15 years ago, Willie Nelson was riding around on his tour bus in a van with diesel engines that were running on recycled kitchen grease. So it still can do that. And in 1900, Rudolf Diesel had won the Paris World's Fair with a diesel engine running nut oil. So he was advocating flexibility with regard to fuels, that it doesn't have to be from petroleum. It can be from coal tar, it can be from vegetable or nut oils as well.
It's interesting that when you talk about the suspects, you're literally naming the who's who of elites at that time.
Can I go back a step? Because this is why the book is particularly fascinating to me. Although I like history, I'm not studied in it. And in order to set the stage for his eventual death, Doug has to tell the world and explain who all these figures are. So he gives backstory, and the backstory is not only fascinating, Doug, it's so incredibly well researched. I don't know how long this novel put together, but if I had to guess, 5, 6 or more years. There's so much packed. Every single word matters.
I think Doug should know that this is the most research you've put into any of our podcasts in the last 6 years. And that's how enthralled he was with this book. In fact, when he booked you for the show, he didn't even tell me about it. I asked him, I said, what's the story here? And then we went into this 45-minute diatribe about Rudolf Diesel. And I'm like, man, talk about flexing that one new topic that you just learned about today.
Well, I wasn't flexing. So, Doug, what you don't know is I work for Gale Banks. I don't know if you know that name or not. As you get more and more into I know that you were introduced to the diesel thing when you purchased a boat and you repowered it. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So you didn't really know much about the history of diesel until that occasion. Well, the guy that I work for, Gale Banks, he was responsible for the diesel pickup aftermarket. So he was the first person to turbocharge a diesel pickup engine. And so I work now at Gale Banks Engineering and Banks Power, and we do turbo systems and intake systems and exhaust systems. And we're one of the leaders in the space, to the extent where Gale Banks in the 80s and 90s became so popular, people would stand outside our door and wait for him to show up because it said Gale Banks on the curb where he would park. He changed that placard to Rudolf Diesel. And the one next to it, to his second command, was Nicholas Otto. So then those were the two placards in front of the front door there. So I
love that. That's great. He's in the you guys are all in the very small percentage of people who knew there was a Rudolf Diesel.
Yeah, and so
I think most people just know that there's a reindeer with a red nose,
right? And the first tuner, the first inline tuner that Gale Banks released for, I think, the Ram 5.9 liter Cummins was called the Otto Mind, OTTO. But everybody would misspell it; they thought it would be AUTO, and so he eventually had to change OTTO to AUTO. Anyway, getting back to this, you start with Rudolf Diesel as a young boy, and working in and around and worshiping his father Theodore, and you follow the family around and their rise and fall and their move from France to Germany to London, and ultimately Rudolf, as a 12-year-old, takes an 8-day trip back to be schooled by a family friend or a family member in Germany because he's so gifted. The parents can't stifle him in London, and they send him off to be schooled in Germany. And that family and the teachers around him realized how smart he was, and they nurtured him. Is that accurate?
That's right. Yeah, he went to study with an uncle who was a mathematician. They were, originally from Germany, living in Paris. And then when the Franco-Prussian War broke out, all people of German background were booted out of France. So they left France with just the shirts on their back, penniless, and went to London, which was really in the belly of the Industrial Revolution. So they actually moved in the same neighborhood that is the setting for Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist. That gives you a sense of sort of the poverty and the tenement housing that they were in at that time in 1870. And then they got this lifeline to go send Rudolf to get an education back in Germany with his uncle.
They put him through school. He sets all the records, basically, got the highest grades all throughout his schooling, and of course had the eyes on him. And then he eventually goes to work for another inventor who was the first to popularize ice machines. Right?
Right.
And then, Holman, I bet you didn't know that Diesel, he would fix and sell these ice machines. And at that time, ice could not be put in drinks because it wasn't potable. Rudolf Diesel invents the ice cube that you can put in drinks. In your Dr. Pepper, that ice cube is thanks to Mr. Rudolf Diesel, which I had no idea until I read that in Doug's book.
Then did you savor your ice cube just a little bit more than usual?
I did. I did.
I'm looking at Doug's book here. The back cover has some of the different reviews.
Yeah, they're reviews by other authors.
Right, yeah. When an author kind of gives their thing. Anyway, Jay Wink from the New York Times says, equal parts Walter Isaacson and Sherlock Holmes. Right there, I think you would have me. So anybody who knows Walter Isaacson, he's an amazing biographer. He did Steve Jobs and a bunch of other people. Really, massive research. And then just the Sherlock Holmes angle. And hearing the excitement of Lightning to, I literally hasn't been this excited in a long time about reading. I'd like to thank you for bringing that back to him.
I feel like this is going to end up as a film. It has to be. I'm sure you've sold the rights to a film, Doug.
Well, someone has, a producer in LA has taken the option for the movie rights. And then, there are people, screenwriters have expressed some interest. The cast of characters in the book is just phenomenal. I know you're far enough along to know most of it. So, for example, when the diesel engine, the patent was issued and he had a working commercial model of the engine, he licensed the exclusive rights to manufacture and market the engine by national territory. In North America, that was taken by Adolphus Busch, the founder of Anheuser-Busch, who used the diesel engine to power refrigeration and pump water in his breweries. And he also had a separate business building submarine diesels for the U.S. Navy. And as you go all around the world, it's like a who's who of the major industrialists of the time were involved in the diesel engine, and it was powering it. It changed the world. It changed how we do distribution, and it still does to this day. 100% of cargo ships around the world to this day are still diesel powered. It powered the railroads. Anything larger than a passenger car is diesel powered. All heavy equipment, farm machinery, it's all diesel. It's amazing. It does everything.
It's amazing testament to it's part of the story of the Industrial Revolution. And to your point, even you look at freight trains today, they're diesel electric. They may be hybrids and they may have the electric component, but there they are, diesel engines powering those. And you look at, the move into electrified semi-trucks and things like that. Diesel is still king when it comes to pulling those long distances, 1,000 miles, major grades at 80,000 pounds. It's just that it's a technology that allows you to do that safely, efficiently, and with a robust infrastructure. I don't think that we're going to be going away from diesel anytime soon. In fact, I was just reading a article this week. So if those who are listening are familiar with the concept of the super trucks, so there's been a kind of a contest that put out by the government for subsidizing these concept semis. And so the latest round is Super Truck 2, and Kenworth just released theirs. And they have gotten this diesel hybrid semi-truck to weigh less, haul more, and get 13 miles per gallon, which is a massive improvement over today's trucks, which already are a huge improvement over yesterday's semi-trucks. In fact, Kenworth says that it's done 136% freight efficiency improvement compared to just the 2009 660, which at the time was a very aerodynamic and very efficient semi-truck. So even in that space, with the leaps and bounds of technology, the diesel engine is still, forgive the pun, pulling strong.
Very, very much. I know a lot of companies like Toyota, they're veering away from electric. A better path is improving, as you say, the efficiency for diesels, and also looking at different fuels. Biodiesel fuels can burn more cleanly sometimes, and they're finding than petrol diesel options as well. I just want to say I love the enthusiast groups that I found. There are two main ones that I've discovered in running around on book tour. One, of course, is trucking, which has been amazing. The other is around marine, and I did an event at a sort of a fishing club marina. It wasn't this big clubhouse, basically where people roll off the water and have a bunch of kegs and bourbon. And I saw about 15 of these guys just a month ago, which is months after I'd done the event, and they were saying they were in New Jersey, and they were saying all up and down the East Coast, everyone in every marina is reading this book. They're all obsessed with diesel because all these guys in the bigger fishing boats are running diesels. And so they've just been devouring the book and the backstory and how it evolved and how much it changed ocean-going travel.
Going back, it's so important to note that this is in the late 1880s, 1890s, and early 1900s. And prior to that, it was steam. And it was about external combustion. And there was always an intermediate device. So the boiler, it was all steam. And so you had to heat up the water, and then it would then turn the turbine or whatever. They were so inefficient. You're talking about single-digit efficiency. 5, 6, 7% if it was really, really efficient. And here comes the first diesel when he finally debuted it in front of a crowd, and it's 26% somewhere in there efficient, and it blew everybody away. And he expected it to be even more efficient, and it eventually got more efficient. But that put him on the road to success, I think, right?
That's right. Yeah, as one journalist at the time said, he's quadrupled man's power over nature because we can now get 4 times the amount of energy out of a given unit of fuel than we could before. And one of the images I try to evoke in the book is that scene from the movie Titanic with DiCaprio that we all know, when the camera goes down into the belly of the ship and you see these dozens and dozens of men sweating, shoveling coal into this hot, fiery orange furnace. That furnace is then boiling, as you say, a big vat of water. It's simple technology, like a pot on a stove. It's the same thing. You're just heating water to create steam. They then capture that steam in all these valves and tubes, and that force of the steam moves the gears of the engine. But then that furnace also requires a whole chimney apparatus to have plumes of smog, out into the atmosphere through these chimneys on the deck of the ship. It is crazy inefficient. Those, on a ship like the Titanic, they'd have hundreds of people whose job it was just to shovel coal around the ship. And those people need a place to stay. They need food to eat. All of that stuff was inefficiency. The diesel engine just, it automatically draws liquid fuel from a tank. You don't have hundreds of people shoveling coal, and you don't have a chimney apparatus. You don't have a whole vat full of water to boil. The fuel explodes inside the engine. Obviously the internal combustion, which is different from, as you say, the external combustion of steam. So it was a remarkably better, more efficient way to get propulsion on a ship.
But just like Holman, the guys at Industrial Injection and all over at UCC Ultimate Callout Challenge, which is a big horsepower contest in Indiana, Doug, where the goal now is like above 3,000 horsepower for a diesel pickup truck, mostly Cummins trucks. The guys will spray the entire crowd with parts. Like the engines will explode.
Well,
not on purpose. But famously at that event, engines explode into great balls of flames and pistons go hundreds of feet in the air. That happened to Rudolf Diesel when he was first inventing this engine. Like the compression would be too high. And he tried it with gasoline before he discovered, because diesel fuel was much, much later. He was trying all sorts of other chemicals, like hydrazine and all these other things to see what would combust. And finally, can you take us through some of that, Doug?
Yeah, the moment you're describing in the diesel lab in Augsburg, Germany, it's a great moment in the book because you're right. He thinks it's going to be like 1,000 pounds per square inch, and it ultimately he uses a much more volatile fuel than he later does, and it's a multiple of that in terms of the pressure. So it blows these engine parts all over the room. They hit the deck, they survive it, The walls are completely pockmarked with shrapnel. But it's this wonderful moment because he realizes it works because he doesn't use a spark. The diesel engine, that's one of the big differences between diesel versus gasoline engines, is diesel is not spark ignition. It's a compression engine. So he thought, if I drive this piston in, essentially it's the same technology as like a bicycle tire pump. You have this cylinder, you jam down the plunger, and in the case of a bicycle tire pump, the air goes out into the tire. But in the case of the diesel engine, it's a closed cylinder. So that air just gets highly compressed in a tiny space, and that pressure creates heat. So his idea was, I'm going to create enormously high pressure, which will generate heat. I will then introduce fuel, and that will ignite the fuel. We don't need a spark. And so that moment of the explosion proved his theory correct. So it was sort of this eureka, wonderful moment, like, yes, the compression ignition works. The cylinder, the piston of the cylinder jammed down, introduced fuel, and bam, it ignited.
He almost killed himself, but he had made the discovery in the process. And Holman, as a cigar smoker, you'll appreciate that what set him on this path was a cigar lighter. Is that correct, Doug?
That's right. Yeah, tinder lighter, cigar lighter. So same idea. Closed cylinder, you jam down the plunger, and at the bottom of the cylinder, in that compressed air, is a little ember. And if you jam it down, you thrust it down fast, and that ember starts to glow.
I often like to light my cigars with glow plugs. Not a lot of people know that. So, Doug, I'm kind of curious. One of the things, looking through your list of books, they're all different. You've got Trophy Son, The Means, The Ghosts of Manhattan, and it seems like they're not all the same. You're not, doing the same book over and over again. They seem very different. I was curious, knowing that you repowered this boat, what was the process? Well, I definitely want to know what you ended up putting in your boat, but what was the process of you researching this repower that really got you hooked on not only wanting to know more and do the research behind Rudolf Diesel, but wanting to be the guy that wrote the novel about it? Because to me, that's, as a writer myself, I'm always fascinated with that thought process of, where do you jump the shark? Where are you just an enthusiast or somebody who's learning about a topic so that you can understand it and tell your friends Friday night at the bar, versus you're going to be the guy that tells the story and you are going to attach your name to it and make sure it's as accurate as possible because you want to be the foremost expert in that subject?
Yeah. So as you say, before this book, I wrote 3 novels, so these fictional stories. And then when I bought the boat, the guy in the boat was describing diesel to me. I can take a lit match and drop it in a barrel of diesel fuel and nothing will happen. And 100% of boat fires come from gasoline engines, none from diesel.
Tell me he threw a match into it just to show you.
That would have been brilliant. In the movie version, we'll do it that way.
Yes.
Perfect.
So I did repower, and then I came across this, looking for ideas for another novel, came across this list of mysterious disappearances at sea that mentioned Rudolf Diesel. And so when I first started to write it, I thought maybe I will stay with fiction, which is what I've done before. I'll write historical fiction because there's so little written about the man. The Encyclopedia Britannica entry, it's gotten longer since my book came out, actually, but back then, this is now 7 years ago or so, there was very little, even in the encyclopedia, there was very little written about him anywhere. And so I was like, well, I've got the scaffolding of a good story here. I can make up the rest and fill in the dialogue. But the more I got into it, the more I had a theory of the case. Not to spoil things for your listeners, but I solved the case, I believe, and former British Intel and CIA officers believe I have as well. I realized I've got to do this as nonfiction. And I got into archives in Germany and in America. There's a lot of stuff from old Bush archives. And I started finding enough material that I thought I could actually do a real nonfiction book. So it's narrative nonfiction, sort of in the style of Eric Larson or David Gran or folks like that. So that was a totally different thing for me. I've always done a lot of research, even for my novels, even for my fiction. Trophy Son, for example, is about a tennis prodigy who goes pro, and I did interviews with James Blake and John Isner and other American great tennis players. But this was a totally different story. It's got deeply researched a note section, so everything is fully sourced back to the archival source or the other books that I used in doing the research. So it was a learning process for me, but it was a ton of fun. And the book I'm working on now is another nonfiction book from the same period of time, quarter century before World War I.
Did you fall into that based on the research for this book? And you went, oh, now I got to go tell that story too. And do you see yourself kind of going down a path of getting into more nonfiction now? Is it lit a fire inside of you in a sense?
It has. I really loved it. and I'm loving this next one. I actually re-signed with Simon & Schuster for 2 more of these nonfiction style books.
Oh, congrats.
Very
Thank
cool.
you. And this next one, I haven't fully disclosed what it's about, but it does have a small amount of overlap with Diesel, and it is in that same period of decades just leading up to World War I.
Interesting. So a couple things. You mentioned footnotes. I would say every third page, there's a footnote that is just as interesting, if not more so, than the passage that got you to the footnote.
Is it the printed version of what I like to call the wiki web? As you're reading, you get those hyperlinks. You're like, oh, I got to go read about this. And then you spend hours around this topic and adjacent stuff. Does it drive you to want to do more research on that topic as you're reading it?
A little bit, but it answers the question that doesn't fit in the narrative above it. But it's all these nuggets that you really want to know. It's fascinating. And I was so desperately wanting to dog-ear the pages of this, but I thought I'm not going to defoul the book by dogging it. So I used a standard bookmark. Well, it's a
Polaroid.
It is a Polaroid of when I
don't even want to know what's on that photo.
No, it's actually me and the guys from Donut Media it's a Polaroid. Don't ask me why. But I thought it was particularly interesting that Rudolf Diesel was a person that wanted to change the world for the better. Because his father fell on such destitute and ultimately kind of went off the deep end, and when they lost their wife, he lost his wife and became what's the term for it? Where a mysticist? Is that right, Doug?
Yeah, magnetotherapy, like a magnetism.
Just went loonball, and even so, Rudolf Diesel thought his father was loony. But anyway, my point is that he wanted to create an engine that would supply power to middle-class working people in rural countryside all over the world, change the way energy is delivered. And he had a utopian vision. He loved art. He loved music. The people he surrounded himself with were of that ilk. But his engine becomes so popular with the military sector of the world. You know, it, like you said, it ended up in U-boats and powering battleships. And I haven't got beyond the chapter 17, but I would imagine he's growing more and more weary and fearful of what the monster he's created.
That's a really interesting part of the book. It's one of the central tensions of the book. In the 1880s, he had developed this list of intended uses for the diesel engine, which included dentistry and woodworking, rural craftsmen, as you say, like his father. Because at that time, the steam engine was the size of a room, and so it wasn't a practical energy source for these decentralized economies and rural businessmen. So we thought, in the end, Tesla's electric motor really became the power source for that use. And the diesel engine, ironically, became the power source for war and big industry, which was counter to what Diesel had envisioned. And he was generally a peaceful guy. I think, he grew up surrounded by wars all over Europe, so he recognized that, there is peace through strength, I guess. But he was generally a pacifist, and he certainly didn't intend for his engine to become an implement of war. And that is one of the ironies. And one of the things I've talked about a bit in connection with this is this term called technical sweetness. And that term first came into use decades ago. It describes the sense of euphoria that an inventor feels when the invention advances. And that sense of euphoria can sometimes overwhelm any sense of caution about whether the invention should advance. And so it first came into use, the term technical sweetness, in connection with Oppenheimer and the bomb. And we use it a lot today in connection with AI.
ChatGPT.
We use it today with AI, exactly.
Yep.
It applies really to diesel as well, because as early as 1902, 1903, and 4, the French military, the French Navy, was using the diesel engine to power submarines. And at that time, the submarine was a very controversial weapon. You can't sink a ship and then rescue any cargo or crew. And it's this stealth weapon. The British admirals thought, this is ungentlemanly, it's un-British. We don't want to use submarines. That's not a fair fight. We use battleships. And so it was a controversial weapon, but diesel was the only way to do it. And while he certainly didn't set out to do that, that was not on his list of, rural artisan uses of the engine. He was working closely with the French to help them develop this. He encouraged the Germans to do it. And he obviously was co-founding a company in Great Britain to do it for the Royal Navy. So you could argue that he also suffered from technical sweetness.
It's almost like he was playing all sides. Did that come into play where as the I guess the powers that be changed alliances? Was it bad for him to have his finger in the bowls of so many different countries to come up with this new stealth technology for their militaries?
Well, the military, he was also very focused on inland use for, to power some of the uses that Bush was using for his breweries. That was a main focus for him. He was focused on the railroads. He was trying to develop a lighter weight diesel for smaller passenger cars. So he did a lot more than just the military. But his goal, one of the stipulations in his licensing agreements with all national territories was that any advances with the engine had to be contributed back to sort of a central knowledge base that would be shared globally so that everyone could benefit from sort of these splinter advancements. They would all sort of come back to the mothership and help everyone.
Open sourcing, basically.
Yeah, open source. But even that had to be super novel at the time, really, to say. And patents were so important back then. I mean, they're violated all the time, but it sounded like they weren't violated as frequently in the turn of the century.
You're right. It was a controversial thing. People noted that this was, I guess they called it sort of a very liberal-minded approach to the advances in the technology, that this would be contributed back and shared. And of course, it fell apart. This is the height of nationalism. And so as soon as it became something that was acknowledged as useful for war, for submarines, everyone sort of buttoned up their national borders on advances, and they were not sharing new designs for diesel engines that could work in submarines. And so it didn't really work to have that central repository of knowledge.
It is an absolute fascinating story. And of course, in the end, he dies. But how and why?
It's a mystery.
And how did Doug... So, Doug, when you came to the realization that you had solved it, tell me about that moment. Where were you? Take me through that moment when you thought, I've solved a century-old case.
It wasn't so much a single moment, because it was early on that I developed a theory of what happened. I'm like, I think these other options don't make any sense. This kind of makes sense. And then over the course of a couple of years, every piece of information I uncovered from archives supported that theory of the case. And it just became overwhelming. It's a circumstantial case. It's more than 100 years old. But even today, if you look at murder cases, the criminal prosecutors will tell you most crimes are solved by circumstantial evidence. It's very rare to have a case where someone says, I saw the knife go in, and, normally it's circumstantial, and it's an overwhelming amount of circumstantial evidence that supports the conclusion of the case, which, again, I don't want to spoil for listeners, but it has been vetted by a number of former British intelligence and CIA officers who feel this is exactly what happened. But there would be a number of moments. There were dozens of little moments where I'd find some piece of evidence, and it would just further, be one more thing on the pile, proving the case.
What has the response been to the book from the people who also had that, like, I grew up thinking these things, but you've really solidified it for me? Like, have you had that? A cohesive response from readers?
Yeah, I would say 9 out of 10 are 100% persuaded. 1 out of 10 is like, I still have kind of questions, but that actually is the only thing that makes a lot of sense. And then from people who are in the intelligence community, it's 100% say this is exactly what happened.
No kidding.
And then there are two diesel people alive today related to Diesel. One is related to his daughter, if you follow that thread down. She lives in Germany, and she was fascinating to speak with. The other was a descendant of Rudolf's uncle, and he lives in France, right on the border of Germany. And I actually got in touch with him before I handed in the final version of the book, and he'd done a ton of family research, and he pointed me to a couple of archives where he'd been with his family, kind of tracing back his lineage. And one was in Denmark, and they had some great old photos of some early diesel engines and the people who worked on it. And Kaiser Wilhelm toured this early diesel-powered cargo ship in 1912. So I got some great stuff that I ended up using in the book.
So what brand diesels did you go with for your boat? I have to know.
He skirted that the first time.
I know. I
Like,
did.
like,
I'm not going to let him get away from this.
he didn't do Duramax. He doesn't have a Scorpion from a Ford. He doesn't have is it a Cummins?
No, Yanmars.
Yanmar.
All right.
Okay, we're not as familiar with Yanmar.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe a Volvo or
Volvo would have been
John Deere or a Cat.
I think Yanmar maybe is more in the marine area. They're twin 370 horsepower Yanmars on the back of this boat.
Very cool.
And this was your first boat, and what led you to the repower?
Well, first sort of, I grew up on like 18-foot Garveys and whalers and things like that. This is a little bit bigger, so it's the first.
Nothing like a 17-foot whaler Montauk with no rail on the front, and every time you hit a wave, it comes over the front, and there's no such thing as bow riding on one of those.
That's right. That's what I grew up on. So
those things are awesome.
Yeah, those are fun. Our kids will be bombing around on those things, crabbing and things like that in the bay.
Very cool.
Oh, it's called a shelter island. It's a 38-foot shelter island. It's kind of like a cruising around, drink some bourbon kind of a boat.
Well, funny you should say that. I have some Kentucky Owl and some Angel's Envy finished rye here in the podcast studio right now, trying to decide which one I want to go with tonight.
Oh, I wish I was there with you. That sounds fantastic.
If you ever find yourself in Huntington Beach, California, come on over. We'd love to have you in studio with us.
Deal.
So a lot of you might not know this, but Doug also, like myself, obviously author, writer, but like us, is also a podcaster. And so he has a podcast called Dedicated, which you discussed cocktails before delving in with some of your favorite authors, which is really cool.
I love doing it because it gets me out of my little bunker where I'm writing all by myself all day. So yeah, I interview great writers. We start each episode with the favorite cocktail of the guest, and I just fix the drink there right in the studio. So we've had Negronis, Manhattans, Martinis, gin and tonics.
I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy myself.
Yep, we've had a few
bourbon
old-fashions. We've had that too. And just have a drink and talk about the writer's lifestyle and work and funny behind-the-scenes stories with book tours and agents and book-to-film
I know
stuff.
you said you have good writers on, but if you ever want a poor line writer who writes automotive content, you just you let me know, because at least I can drink.
You can drink, yes. That is true. What is the name of the podcast, and where can we find it? Everywhere?
It's called everywhere. It's called Dedicated with Doug Brunt. It's on. We started doing video recently, so you can get it on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts.
Fantastic. Wow. So this was phenomenal. I'm really excited to finish this book. And if you're as interested in it as I was, The Mysterious Case of Rudolf Diesel by Douglas Brunt, it's available everywhere.
And how do we get a signed copy, Doug?
There are a couple bookstores. One is in Rye, New York, and another is in Manhattan. One's called Arcade Books in Rye, or a corner bookstore in Manhattan. They have signed stock in there, and they can handle all shipping and stuff like that.
What's no love
for you guys,
your folks in LA?
Well, hold on, let him finish.
They can ship to you guys from there. But you guys send me a note afterwards, and I'll send a book out to you.
No, seriously, about the podcast, that's awesome. I was doing a little research on you, and I was like, man, what a cool idea. And we've been doing this thing for, almost 6.5, almost 7 years now. So I think we're at about 350 episodes.
So you've got the diesel heads like me. We just love diesel pickup trucks and diesel boats and everything else. But have you now, do people just assume that you're one of the diesel guys, quote unquote, that you're like, I'm rolling coal on my Ram with a 6.7 liter Cummins,
No one's assumed that. I mean, I get a lot of emails off the website of people who are real diesel enthusiasts. I mean, they really understand how to get under the hood and fix a diesel, which is not me. I can't do that. But, as a diesel owner now, I feel a connection to it. It's like, I feel like everyone who has a diesel feels some pride. There's a reason they have it, and they feel pride in it. And so I get a lot of emails from folks who, anyone who owns a diesel really, they may not know the whole Rudolf Diesel backstory, but they understand a lot about diesel and why it's different.
Well, I love that this doesn't require you to be an enthusiast, right? It actually adds to an enthusiast's repertoire of the history, or to understand their truck or their passions, that the root of how it all came to be. I think that's really neat.
Yeah, the mystery, so you'll get to the mystery as it unfolds here at the very end, but if you enjoy Harlan Coben, you'll love this book. It's got that sort of element too. So it's part biography, it's part mystery, it's part like European history.
It's almost like mixed genre. Like I said, when I was looking at some of the other books that you did, I went, wow, this is so much different than what he's written in the past. And it was really intriguing to me because you do have such a mix of how this book is laid out. It's almost like you've taken this genre, but you've made it your own, and the way you've laid it out to the reader that kind of sets your style or your stance in this place. And that's why I asked you if you were excited about doing more, because it seems like you really attacked this one really with a lot of passion.
Yeah, I did. And I think that's why the editor who acquired the book believed that I could get it done in a good way, because it's history told in a novelistic way. It reads like an action thriller, but it's history, which is to Diesel's credit. It's just a crazy story.
It's awesome. Well, we really appreciate your time and hanging out with us two knuckleheads. We, we believe it or not, people don't know it, but we can read. So it's great to have.
Speak for yourself.
It's great to have people who we've never done from a novelist perspective. We've had friends who've written about history before, or maybe a car book or things like this. So this is one of those kind of like fun sort of adjacent stories that the listener isn't going to expect. But I think they're going to dive right in because they're going to go, wow, that's not what they usually do. This is amazing. So hopefully we created some new fans for you, and I'm going to give you a follow on Instagram and that. But just really appreciate your time. This has been great.
I really appreciate it as well. I hope you get good feedback on the episode, but it was great speaking with you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Doug, so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Holman, this is time for a truck review. And a couple episodes ago, you were out in the 720 horsepower Raptor R, and you were romping through the Southern California desert, giving us a great review. So thank you for that. I think that was really enjoyable to listen to.
And then I teased you.
You did. You teased us afterwards with your favorite F-150. But my impression is it wasn't a Raptor. So what in the world is your favorite F-150?
Well, hit that jingle.
Truck review, yeah, rolling coal and dragging truck nuts.
Ooh, solid, yes. Yeah,
All
well
right.
done. All right.
So I love the Raptor. I love the Raptor R more than I love the regular Raptor, to be honest. And it's not because the regular Raptor is down on horsepower or anything. I just feel like the Raptor R, as I told you in our previous show, just feels like a more complete truck. It just feels more balanced and just a better driver, and the power is so linear, and just there's a lot to love about that truck. Not that the regular Raptor is bad. Obviously, great truck, but the Raptor R is sublime in so many ways.
So it's not just the engine; it's holistic.
It's just the way the truck feels. It's the power delivery. It's all the goodness. But that's not my
all the goodness.
That's not my favorite F-150. And some of you may be surprised to hear that. And I will tell you that on the Raptor Drive, we also drove another truck, and that was the F-150 Tremor, which I think is the best kept secret in the Ford F-150 lineup. And
now, this would not be the first time you've said that.
And I don't feel any different for 2024. I think, in fact, the Tremor is even better and more Raptor-like for 2024 than the previous generation. It's got its own unique styling. It's got a Raptor-like hood with a power dome and some of the Raptor-like vents in it.
Power dome? You mean the bulge in the hood?
That's what it's called. It's power dome. Yeah.
Okay.
But
I've got a power dome, and it's right. Keep going.
That's not what you'd find in the dictionary. So what's interesting about this truck is it gives you a whole lot of off-road capability. You've got just a litany of upgrades over the standard F-150, but it's for somebody who's not going to go bombing Baja or need to tear off through the desert.
Which is, by the way, most of us.
Hence my reasoning for this is the best buy with F-150. So when you look at the Tremor, 33-inch General Grabber ATX tires, which is great, on 18-inch wheels. The stance is really, really cool. It's got some orange accents now. It's got some of those little Raptor styling bits. It even has the same modular front bumper as a Raptor with its own unique end cap since the Raptor's wider. But what that means is there's a slew of accessories, whether it's a winch or a light bar or all that stuff that you can bolt to Ford's factory bumper. So you can get metal bumpers on it that are modular, which I think is
that's
awesome.
Kind of cool. And regarding the stance, some of the Tremors that I've seen have usually they look taller than the Raptors. Is that true? Or
No. No,
I
they're
haven't
not-
seen them side by side.
They're not taller. No.
Okay.
On the suspension, the front, upper, and lower control arms, the tie rods, and the knuckles are all Tremor specific. So Ford updates all of that stuff. One weird thing that I don't agree with is the dampers. They have monotubes up front, and then they use twin tubes in the rear, which is super weird. I would
Why? Do you think just cost cutting?
probably. I'd rip all that out, and I would put in monotubes, all four corners, get a nice Bilstein direct replacement. Then you can get that lift that you want. You know, you can level it out and get a little bit more a better ride. But they do use a 2-stage rear leaf spring in the back. The Tremor sits about an inch higher than an F-150 with the FX4 off-road package, and the track width is about an inch wider. But you have to remember the FX4 has a lot to do with being more of a badge and sticker package. Yeah, it adds like skid plates, I think, and some different twin tube shocks.
But it's not really off road.
It's not where Tremor is. So Tremor will give you 9.8 inches of ground clearance, 25.2 degree approach angle, a 20 degree breakover angle, and a 26.9 degree departure angle. When you're looking at it from a drivetrain standpoint, the Tremor is available in the EcoBoost.
Oh yeah, you got to have the turbos.
Nope. And the 5-liter V8.
What?
So-
What?
And they don't offer the hybrid in the Tremor. So
Since when has that?
it's always been the case.
It has?
Yeah, but that's what I like about the Tremors. You can get the V8 with it. And for me, like the V8 is the sweet spot in that light. So yes, the V6, it makes 400 horsepower, 500 pound-feet of torque. The V8 makes 400 horsepower and only 410 pound-feet of torque. Trust me, it's plenty. But if you don't need the turbos, you don't want the headache of turbos, you don't want forced induction, you don't live at altitude, you'll find that 5-liter Coyote is just a sweet, sweet engine. Both are backed by Ford's 10-speed automatic. And then, of course, 2-speed transfer case,
Whipple supercharger.
which you could
Whipple
also do,
supercharger.
and which will give you 700 and something horsepower as well.
Exactly. Because what I mean, look, in today's age, there are people that's like, oh, turbos aren't reliable. I mean,
Well, it's not that
turbos are plenty reliable.
No, but there's been people are saying that because there have been a lot of quality issues, especially the COVID cars, stuff that was built through 20, 21, 22 had a gazillion problems. Why, if you don't need to add a turbo to it, if it's not necessary in your lifestyle, if you don't need that much power, I know I said that. If you're not at altitude, you
What are
don't
you,
want the forced
communist?
induction. No, I like V8s. Same thing. I got my 392. It's a big old stupid V8.
yeah,
Does
but
everything I wanted to do.
6.4 liters.
Yeah.
Not a 5.4. What's the Coyote?
No, it's a 5-liter.
5-liter. Okay.
But here's the thing that I like more than anything about the Tremor. So you get a little bit taller, you get a little bit wider, you get a little bit bigger tire. You still get a rear locker. You got all the skid plates. You get the modular front bumper. You get a unique rear bumper, and you get like Raptor style aluminum running boards. All cool, right?
Okay. What are we missing? Some interior bits like Tremor above the glove box? What?
So if you get a Tremor, it's a better daily driver. The suspension's tighter. It's not as not that the Raptor's wallowy, but you don't have to worry about parking it.
Well,
and you don't have
the
that-
Raptor has to be softer because it's got to go over whoops.
Well, and it's
you're not
again,
going to
it's
counter
wider.
that.
You can only get the shorter bed with it. So the Tremor, to me, let's put it this way: max tow package with a 3.5-liter EcoBoost, you have 2,445 pounds of payload with a max tow rating of 13,500 pounds.
Okay.
Contrast that to the V6 Raptor at 1,405 pounds of payload.
Yeah.
And with the Raptor R, it's 1,410. And an 8,200 pound max tow rating, the Raptor R is 8,700. So you're talking, what, 6,000 pounds more towing?
Yeah, that's a lot.
And over 1,000 pounds more payload? Like, it's just better at the everyday truck stuff. It's
It
a
is.
better
It's
all-around
going to
truck.
ride a lot stiffer. It has to carry that.
No, it feels really good. We drove them off-road.
But compared to the Raptor R, it's going to be mushy.
It's fine. No, they drive different, yes, but you're not one's not a penalty box over the other. As long as you aren't using all that wheel travel, it's completely fine. Nobody's going to be like, wow, this rides way harder than a Raptor or anything like that. It's stunningly good, and that's one of the reasons that I like it so much. And it's got a bunch of technology like the one-pedal drive and trail turn assist that came out of the Bronco, as well as the trail control, which is like the cruise control in low range. And the starting price, it's a little bit more expensive than last year. Last year was $62,865. Now it's $66,790. But for all that equipment, that's a really good price, especially when you consider Some of the mid-sized trucks are creeping into the high 60s now.
Oh, for sure. Now, wait. The Tremor is a package that includes everything, or are there options within the Tremor package?
You can get additional options.
You can.
Yeah, as well.
So it could get a little complicated.
Well, it's just typical Ford. They give you way too many choices, and but there's different packages you can add. Anyway, my point is that if you need a truck to do truck stuff and you also need to go off-road, go look at the Tremor. If you don't need the kind of boy racer-ness of the Raptor R or the Raptor, you don't need the graphics packages, you don't need all that crazy. If you just need a really good truck that out of the box is a really, really decent off-roader, consider this the same as maybe a Trail Boss or a Ram 1500 like a Rebel.
Well, compare it to a Trail Boss for me.
So I think they're really comparable. I think if you're a Chevy guy, you're going to get the Silverado. I think if you're a Ford guy, you're going to get the Ford. They line up really nicely on the spec sheet. So, for example, with the Trail Boss, you can get it with the 4-cylinder, 310 horsepower, 430 pound-feet of torque, or the 5.3-liter V8, 355, 383. But on the Trail Boss, you can also get a work truck, so you can get it, I believe, a little bit cheaper than like an LT. But from a spec standpoint, they're pretty comparable trucks. So, it's I would say the ZR2 is more like a Raptor V6 competitor, and the Ram Rebel plays more with Trail Boss and Tremor, but you can see how the capability and pricing, there's not exactly a 1-to-1 for each of them. They kind of overlap a little bit. ZR2 is like a little higher, a little closer into Raptor range, but not fully. And if you're a Ford person or just a pickup truck person in general, and you need some off-road capability, you don't want the width, but you need the towing and payload, and you want a V8, there's not a lot of options out there, and Tremor, for me, just hits that really, really sweet spot in Ford's lineup.
I'd like to talk to someone who made the decision to either they didn't want the 3.5 EcoBoost, and they went with the V8, or vice versa. Like, I'd be curious what your decision-making process was. Like, was it towing? You didn't want turbo lag, or what was your reason for buying one or the other?
Man, V8's so sweet.
I know, but the power is a little bit better in the EcoBoost.
Yeah, but when you're towing, the EcoBoost is on the boost.
True. Right?
And you got to watch it for EGTs. You just don't have to worry about any of that stuff with the V8.
True, yeah.
It's just with the 10-speed, it just feels like the perfect pickup truck.
Yeah. Truckshowpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know how you would make or have made that decision between the EcoBoost or the naturally aspirated 5-liter Coyote. Holman, so 2 thumbs up for the Tremor F-150, and you actually would prefer it over the Raptor, is what I hear.
I think if I had if I had one vehicle that had to do it all, I'd go, that Tremor F-150 is a really great choice. In the Ford lineup, if I wanted to go show off to my friends and go huck things and be like the baddest,
then it's Raptor.
It's Raptor.
Yeah, of course.
It's that's just the way it is. But for an all-around great truck, Raptor's really expensive, and there's a lot of compromise with that in terms of truck capability that most buyers probably don't want. And I think they would be better served with a Tremor. So Tremor is my favorite F-150 in Ford's lineup.
So if you weren't thinking about it, maybe it's time to go look at one. All right, it's time for some email, boys and girls.
You email? Yeah. I email? Do it. We email? That's right. Everybody email. Type it up. You email? Proofread. I email? Send it. We email? Click it. Everybody email.
All right, you've got a mean old stack of email over there, but you're going to have to hand one to your man Lightning, because I got nothing over here.
Hold on, I'm listening to the music here.
All right. I got one here from RB, frequent emailer to truckshowpodcast@gmail.com. Subject line says, and people bitch about Ram's rotary transmission selector.
I don't. I actually like it. I think it works fine.
I'd
much rather have it. No. I much rather have that than that stupid-ass GM SUV one that's push-button.
Oh, no question about that.
Those are horrible.
That's awful. That is dog meat. No, for sure. I will take rotary over that. He says, I guess they don't realize that something as manly as a Mack truck now has a push-button transmission selector. And he's got a photograph of a reverse, neutral, drive, plus, minus, manual, whatever, all push-button on a Mack truck. That is lame sauce. Lame sauce.
All right, I got this one here from Greg Madden. Just says, show. Holman, Continuing to love the show, even with that other whiny guy on there at the TRX.
Hey, you. I mean, thank you for listening.
Then in
Appreciate it.
parentheses, he says, don't tell him right away, but I'm joking. He's cool, too.
Oh, thank you very much.
I think it's awesome that you took a chance on your own after your exit from Motor Trend. It seems like you've gotten things going in the right direction with everything you're doing, and that's awesome. I look forward to listening to the new podcast twice a week. Of course,
thank you.
he's hopefully been doing that for a little while. Some of the content doesn't apply, but it's great to learn new things. You all seem to throw humor in there, too, so I always just keep listening. The second meter does go up if the guy with the TRX talks too much, but I'll suffer through it. Dude, it's almost like he was sitting in studio with us 2 minutes ago.
You can hear it sucking.
I mean, and by it, he means lightning. Oh, wait, no, he puts in parentheses, joking. Sitting here eating dinner and watching a YouTube video on the Trail Recon channel. Not sure if you know Brad, but it seems like you would. He has a great channel. I think he might be a good guy to have on the show sometime to talk about what he does and his Jeeps. Keep mounting your parameters. Yeah, buddy. And that's from Greg Madden, Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Yeah, buddy.
So yeah, if you are watching Brad's channel, you probably have seen a cameo of me on there more than once. So I do know Brad, great guy, been on a bunch of times. He is with Sean from The Story Till Now, going to the Arctic Circle right now. So it might be awesome to have. I'll give him a shout when he gets back from his trip because I think it'd be cool to have Brad on the show. He's just honestly one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And yeah, if you guys want to have some of those influencer guys like a Marco or a Brad or a Sean or from Story Till Now or
Who's a Marco?
Marco Hernandez. He's Overland
okay.
X.
Oh, okay.
And
yeah.
He's been on our show on
Yes, he has.
recordings and stuff like that. But yeah, we can do that. I know all those guys pretty well. So happy to oblige. So truckshowpodcast@gmail.com if you guys have suggestions or would like to see some of those guys on the show.
All right, this one's from Jesse Magana. Jesse says, hey, truck buddies, this is Jesse. Just want to let you know that I appreciate your podcast. My son Daniel and I listen to your show every single week.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And hey, what's up, son? I was hoping you would consider a few episodes on your show to talk about lowered trucks. I'm a fan of all trucks, but especially love the lowered ones. I'm sure there are plenty of listeners who would enjoy some content about slam trucks. Maybe some more episodes related to car audio to go with it. Keep up the great work, and thank you for giving us the bonus episodes every Thursday. I know you guys put in a lot of hard work to make the show happen, and we are all grateful for it. And so I'm sure he loved the one with Tim Gilbert and his slammed Ford F-250 Super Duty. We should do more. I'm a huge fan of bagged trucks, or even static, but bagged. Oh.
Hello, Holman. This is from Shane Segelk, New Bison. Says,
Hey, what about lightning?
Nope.
That sucks.
Nope, just me.
All right.
Actually, this came to my own email.
Well, then that makes sense. Okay. No problem, Shane. I'll forgive you.
Says, I've been thinking about trading in my 2019 ZR2 to upgrade to the new 2024 ZR2 Bison. The new truck has a lot of the things I wish mine had that I hadn't spent the money on. 35s, all the skid plates, steel bumpers from the factory. I just wish it had the turbo V6 engine like the Ranger Raptor has in it. Is there any chance Chevy puts a bigger engine in the Bison in the future to compete with the output of the Ranger? I'm certain the answer is definitely no, because the California EV agenda is wiping out the engine wars the OEs used to have. But I wanted to make sure before I got the new truck, now just see bigger engine in a year or two. So I wanted to ask for some advice from your expert knowledge. And absolutely no chance of that happening. The engine that's in it, the 2.7 four-cylinder, which is the base model engine in the Silverado, is the engine. Also, I'm planning a trip out to Moab the first weekend of June, which is coming up. I was wondering if you had any luck finding campsites along the trail or if they're usually taken when you come through. I was hoping just to run trails all day long for 3 straight days and just stop and camp at some point along the way each day. Are there specific spots that you like to camp? Are there typically any available in the area? And I would say, yes, the kind of 2 areas that are near Wheeling that you would want to check out for camp is over out by Chicken Corners. If you take the road, Cane Creek Road, out back there, there's a whole bunch of camping. And even in June, I would say that you have a pretty decent chance of finding something, especially if it's midweek. The other camping area that usually has spots is on the south side of town off Highway 191 near the sand dunes behind the rocks. There's a bunch of campsites out there. And there's also Moab is way bigger than it used to be. Lots of hotel rooms if you needed to find a spot for the night, especially if you couldn't find a camp spot. Good luck out there. Would love to hear about your trip. And sorry you got to this email a little bit late. It's probably there as he's listening to this podcast right now.
Wade Goldsmith writes, Winnie. Interesting. Oh, then I look down further in the email, and it's a license plate on a motorhome. The brand of the motorhome is a Winnebago, and the license plate is WNBGOMN. Winnebago Man. And you know how much I loves me some Winnebago Man.
The Winnebago Concepts and Engineering Departments have developed a multifunctional bathroom. Privacy, I don't know what the I'm reading. I wonder what the the real dialogue is. What the is this thing? All of the windshield, for sake. Oh, what the did I say? That didn't sound for did it? And here, under the hood, we've stored something that'll really come in handy if it doesn't fall out and break my leg.
All right, if you have not seen the documentary Winnebago Man, do yourself a favor and stream that sucker right now because it's awesome.
So and if you just go to YouTube, you'll find the definitive Winnebago Man. That's all the clips.
Yeah, you don't want to watch but don't watch the clips. Go watch the movie.
You want the documentary?
The documentary is heartwarming. Takes you in a bunch of different places that you didn't think you were going to go. It's great stuff.
I love Winnebago Man. See that film? Yeah.
All right, Sammy Mack writes, "Are off-road modes a gimmick?" He says, "Hey, fellas, I feel like I must be losing touch with what people want these days from new off-road vehicles. Help me find some sanity. I started to perceive an overabundance of off-road modes when the Ford Bronco debuted with like 8 different GOAT modes. The latest F-150 and Ranger Raptor confirmed that wasn't by accident. Now, the all-new Toyota Land Cruiser and 4Runner are here. They also continue the theme of offering a wider array of driver-selectable terrain modes that will configure the vehicle to any number of predefined parameters. Or parameters. Not to be left out, I now see the Cybertruck is getting a software update that unlocks a whole new set of off-road modes and the vehicle settings to fiddle with, along with an official off-road guide that explains the new capabilities attached if you haven't seen it yet. So what say you? Are off-road modes just a gimmick, or do they actually provide better, more consistent capability in comparison to just being able to manually lock diffs, disconnect sway bars, select low-range feet traction control? Make it make sense. All right, Sam, I got you on this.
This is a good question.
I got you on this.
But first... He just slid that in there, you notice.
So here's the deal. Manufacturers, like Ford, for example, when the Raptor came out originally, it had Baja mode along with a couple other modes. And on certain vehicles that are electronically controlled, they said, hey, we can make it so your traction control is less in the sand. So you can really roast the tires or throw roosts of sand and things like that. But we don't necessarily want you to be able to do that in this other terrain like rocks. We don't want the throttle sensitivity to be so much. We want to deaden it so that you're not slamming into rocks and things like that. So once they introduced the gateway drug on like the Raptor, well, then they went, well, wow, we already have this technology that we've developed. Let's put it in the Bronco Sport. Let's put it in the Bronco. Let's expand upon it. And over time, since say the Raptor came out or some of the more capable Jeeps like the Rubicons, you've gotten more and more people have gotten themselves into trouble because they're off-road novices. And so what those different modes allow you to do is, to your point, have predefined settings for terrain so that somebody of the lower common denominator and off-road driving skill set can go, ooh, I'm in sand. I'm going to be able to adjust the traction control appropriately. Ooh, I'm in rocks. I'm going to be able to make it so my sway bar disconnects and my rear locker comes on. The good companies either don't have a lot of that, or you can have them configurable to your own off-road setting. Personally, I like driving the vehicle. I don't like when the nannies are on or changed for me. That being said, there is like in the 392. I still have to use off-road mode to unlock the power potential in the 392 because they basically take out the nannies and stuff I don't want there. While I don't think you necessarily need them, so the way the vehicles are today with electronic throttle bodies, electronic throttle control, electronic traction control,
suspension,
all of it, modes are a way to unlock potential capability within there. I had a friend who just bought for example, a Toyota 4Runner, and she said, what is all this stuff? And this is the current generation, right? And it still has trail control and a bunch of stuff. And she's like, can you be honest? Do I need this? Well, she's been driving the desert for 25 years. And I'm like, no, you don't need this. She texted me later. She goes, hey, thanks for letting me know I didn't need any of that stuff.
Well, wait a minute. But she might, though, to unlock certain features that she had before.
Well, my point is the first generation of these systems, like on the Toyota, you don't need to be in a mode to be able to lock the locker, for example. But in the newer stuff, the second or third generation, like a Bronco Sport or a Bronco or or a Raptor or a TRX.
There's only so many modes.
There's
Although
way more stuff that it can do versus an old platform like a 4Runner.
I was going to ask you though, like in the TRX, for example, I can go into a custom mode,
right?
And I set everything up myself. But do all vehicles like yours have a custom mode in your 392? So you are forced to go into a certain mode to.
Well, I'm not forced, but if I want the vehicle to respond the way I want it to, I have to turn certain things off. So I'm still pushing buttons. All the modes do is they predefine what those buttons that have been pushed are. So the knob takes you there. Now, not all of the canned modes are exactly what I want them to be. So that's just the problem with the modern vehicles. There's, to me, turn off as much stuff as you can and let me worry about the vehicle. But that's not possible in everything.
But also, some people shouldn't have everything turned off, as you said.
Well, absolutely. Like some people, if you're driving fast and you have it in Baja or Angel mode or whatever, where you have everything pulled off, a lot of these modern vehicles from the factory have really great suspension, a lot of power. You can hurt yourself. So you don't want to have everything dialed back because you don't want to have a rollover or lose control of the vehicle off-road or something like that. So yeah, you just, I guess at the end of the day, know your limits. And I think for an entry-level driver, those modes are really nice. For a seasoned driver, they can be helpful depending on the platform. But for more advanced drivers, no thank you.
All right, truckshowpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find Holman at truckshowpodcast.com, or this guy with a squeaky voice, Lightning at truckshowpodcast.com.
The Truck Show, the Truck Show, the Truck Show. Oh, oh.
Although I will say my voice is a little less squeaky because I'm so frickin' sick during the show. So
I'm glad that you remembered your name in that last part. All right, if you want to leave a message on the 5-star hotline, 657-205-6105, we want to hear from you. And also, you can follow us on social at Truck Show Podcast, at Sean P. Holman, at LBC Lightning. See what we're up to when we're not stuck in the disgustingly germified podcast studio as we are tonight. And if you would, please be so kind as to send us some Know Your Notes. We haven't done that in a while, and we still need a few more submissions to make a short episode out of that. Head over to truckshowpodcast.com where you can see featured products and deals going up there, what events are happening in your neck of the woods, and leave us a review. 5 stars, please.
Oh my gosh, it's been a minute since we've read 5-star reviews.
That's why we need more of them.
You go to Apple Podcast app. You can find it at the bottom of the podcast. Click 5 stars and leave a funny review for us, or on Spotify. We can do that too.
And if you are wondering what's coming up on our event calendar page, June 7th through 9th, the 13th Annual Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival at the Coopers Lake Campground. And this is one of those amazing events. This is in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, and it's been a huge event for years, and it's something that if you're in that neck of the woods, you want to go to. Also, June 8th and 9th, you've got the Atlantic City Truck Meet. And from June 21st
That's a big show, by the way.
Yeah, June 23rd, you've got Scraping the Coast.
Ooh. Have you ever been to Scraping the Coast?
I have not, but
I
I've
have
heard it's really good.
It is a really fun time. What's the big one? The one you used to go back and where you push
Showfest.
Showfest. Is that the one where you push the refrigerator over the balcony?
I did not do that. No, that was at Heatwave. And that was a Pepsi machine that went into the swimming pool, and that's when we got out of there.
Gotcha. Allegedly.
No, it happened. I had nothing to do with it. It happened. There's nothing allegedly about that.
So Scraping the Coast.
So Scrape the Coast in Biloxi, Mississippi, June 21st through 22nd. You got C10 Nationals in Utah at the Utah State Fair Park in Salt Lake City. And then from June 28th to June 30th, got the Overland Expo PNW for Pacific Northwest. That's at the Deschutes County Expo Center in Redmond, Oregon. So that's coming up this month. So, lots of stuff happening this month. If you've got an event, please submit it, truckshowpodcast@gmail.com, and we will get that up on our events page for you.
And a huge thank you to Nissan for allowing us to bring great guests like Douglas Brunt to you, the Truck Show Podcast listeners. Really, really appreciate Nissan supporting us for all these years. Over 6 years of content.
You mean 6 years of being the presenting sponsor of the Truck Show Podcast?
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I got to say, it speaks volumes about us and Nissan.
We've also had a pretty good run with the folks over at Banks Power.
That's right. If you're looking to squeeze the most efficiency possible out of your diesel pickup truck engine, head over to bankspower.com, type in your year, make, and model, and find the Ram Air intake for your truck.
And whether you've got a brand new truck or an old one that you love a lot, you want to head over to AMSOIL.com. Give it the best kind of love, and that's high-quality premium synthetic lubricants, whether it's oil or transmission fluid, gear lube, even window cleaner, whatever it is, AMSOIL has the synthetics for you. They'll make your truck run better, smoother, more efficiently. And guess what? AMSOIL's been around a long time, so you can trust them with that other love in your life that isn't your wife.
Oh, no, he didn't.
The Truck Show Podcast is a production of Truck Famous LLC. This podcast was created by Sean Holman and Jay Tillis with production elements by DJ Omar Khan. If you like what you've heard, please open your Apple Podcast or Spotify app and give us a 5-star rating. And if you're a fan, there's no better way to show your support than by patronizing our sponsors.
Uh-oh. I guess my mind is going again. My body is dismembered from my mind completely. Which is pretty average with me, but I can't think. Something is wrong with me. I was going bananas. My mind is just ready to go completely.